everybody. Thank you again for watching this episode. If you would, go ahead and hit that like button and comment something that you want me to cook in the future. Without further ado, today we're going to be making iced honey buns. One of my all-time favorite snacks. It probably is one of my favorite things to eat on my cheat days. But today we're making iced honey buns, so let's get into this video. First, we're going to be taking 3/4 cup of milk and putting it in a pot over low heat on the stove, and we're going to be adding in 1/4 cup of unsalted butter, or about a half stick of unsalted butter. You're also supposed to add in your honey at this point, which is 1/3 cup of honey, but I forgot to do that and added mine into the dough. But you're supposed to be adding it in right here and melting all of that and combining it together. Once all of that is combined, we're going to be adding that into our stand mixer, which I have half of our total flour for this recipe, which is 1.5 cups of our 3 cups total. So we have 1.5 cups of flour in the stand mixer, along with 2 tablespoons of instant yeast. So we're just going to add that in, and then we're going to be mixing that until it is thoroughly combined. After that's mixed up a little bit, we're going to be adding in 2 room temperature eggs. The reason you want them to be room temperature is so that they will mix more evenly throughout. So add both of those in really quickly and mix those around. Also, be sure to scrape down the sides of your stand mixer. You might as well do this while you're adding in the egg. Just scrape it down so you get every little piece, and then we're going to mix that together until everything is thoroughly combined. So after your 2 eggs are mixed in, we're going to be lifting up our stand mixer and adding in the rest of our flour. At this step, you should switch to the dough hook attachment on your stand mixer and not do what I did by leaving the whisk attachment on, because I had to clean up a whisk and switch over to the dough hook. So just go ahead and switch over to that so you can go ahead and get this dough kneaded together, and you're going to knead that for about 3 minutes on a medium speed. So as you can see here, I have my dough hook attachment now, and I forgot to add in my honey, so I added it in here at this step, but you should have done this in the beginning on the stove with the butter and the milk. I saw no difference in taste or texture at the end, but I recommend doing it the way that it says, so do that at the beginning, not right here. So after your dough has been kneaded for 3 minutes, we're going to be adding in 1.5 tablespoons of oil. The reason that we're doing this is so that our dough does not stick to the sides of this bowl. We're also going to be flouring our hands and adding in just a little bit of flour. Now we are going to be kneading this by hand for approximately 3 or 4 minutes. You're just going to pick this dough up and slap it down like you see here, and add flour as needed. You're shooting to have just a nice little ball of dough. It's going to be very sticky, but keep at it and you'll eventually get a ball of dough. After we knead this and form it into a ball, we're going to cover it for 1.5 hours to proof. As you can see here, this one has proof for 1 hour. We're going to bow to it and then punch the crap out of it. This is going to let all the gas out, and as you can see, mine didn't get all the way out, so I ended up having to press it down a little bit more with my fingers. Now you're going to flour a work surface in order to work with your dough. So I've dumped mine out on the counter, and I've just picked it up and kind of tucked itself underneath it and rolled it into a ball. So I'm adding a little bit of flour to the top, and now I'm just picking it up and spinning it around in order to get a nice shape with it. So ultimately you want to have a nice smooth ball of dough, and I don't have a rolling pin, so I'm just using a glass bottle I had, and you're going to flour it, and you want to roll this out into a big rectangle approximately half an inch thick. Whenever you are done, your rectangle should look something like this, and you're going to be covering your dough again with a damp towel, and you're going to let this rise for another hour under the towel. Now that it's been an hour and you've uncovered your dough, we're going to be adding in a little bit of flour underneath and peeling this dough up. You want to be very gentle with this. Try not to rip it. It's not the end of the world if you do. Also, add some flour to the top, and we're going to be flipping this on its other side. Once the dough is flipped, you can patch up any holes that might have occurred from sticking, like I had to do. Add a little bit of flour where needed just so it doesn't stick anymore. And after you've added your flour, ensuring that it's not going to stick, we're going to be rolling this out into just about as thin as you can get it without it sticking to the countertop. So just roll it out into one big thin sheet from here. I would say probably a 1/4 inch thick. As you can see, I have my sheet rolled out very thinly, and now what we're going to be doing is rolling it up so we can get that classic honey bun shape. So from here, you want to make one straight line all the way down, as you can see that I'm doing here, and you don't want to roll these tightly because they will come apart easier if you do that actually. So instead of rolling these up tightly, we're going to be getting a nice line here, and the goal is to just fold it over. You don't want to roll it, you want to fold it. So as you can see here, I'm being very careful not to rip anything, making sure that the dough is not sticking to the counter, and just fold it over, ensuring that nothing rips. Just be careful and make sure you get a nice even roll all the way down. So this is what your dough should look like. I'm just flouring a baking sheet here. This is not necessary. I'm just doing this to make sure it doesn't stick. But you're going to set this on your baking sheet, and you're either going to put it in your refrigerator for about 30 minutes to an hour until it firms up. You could also speed this up by putting it in the freezer for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You're just trying to get it firm so you can cut it without it sticking. So as you can see, I'm sticking mine in the freezer, and I'll see you once it is ready. Also, let's not forget our good luck high five from Pikachu. While this is cooling off in the refrigerator, we're going to be making our icing, which is 6 tablespoons of butter accompanied by 2 tablespoons of honey. So we're going to heat this over a very low heat. You don't want this to burn or stick to the bottom of the pan. So get your whisk handy and mix that until it is glossy and thoroughly combined like you see here. Now we are going to be adding in 3 cups of powdered sugar. Don't be like me, adding in this much at a time. You want to add a little bit at a time. It should look a little clumpy because we're going to be adding in 3 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So I'm adding in about half of that right here along with half of my sugar. Mix that around, and then we could go in after we've mixed this around, add in the rest of your powdered sugar and the rest of your vanilla extract. Now we're going to be adding in 3 tablespoons of milk. This is going to help thin out the icing just a little bit. If you like your icing really thin, you can add in more, but I would try this and see how you like it. You can mess around with it a little bit. Now that our dough has firmed up a little bit, we are going to be cutting off the ends of it so we can have nice neat rolls whenever we cut these into 12 pieces. So just do what I'm doing here. Cut off one end, set it off to the side, and then cut off the other end. Next, you're going to cut your log of dough into 12 pieces. So you're going to end up with 12 honey buns. And I also recommend using those end pieces for a test run. Now what I'm doing here is flattening out my dough rounds. So as you can see, I set them up on their side where you can see the spiral like you would in a normal honey bun. And I'm just taking them and patting them down a little bit before I roll over them with my rolling pin or bottle in this case. So spread your honey buns out to where they're not going to be too cramped because they're going to get flattened out. And as you can see, I'm just rolling them down here. You want these to be pretty flat because they're going to puff up a lot in the fryer. So make them as long and flat as you possibly can. See, I had to take a few off on my baking sheet in order to have enough room. So I just grabbed a few plates and set them on there and rolled them all out. Now you should heat your oil up in your pot to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. You can check this if you don't have a thermometer. I would recommend getting a thermometer, but you can check this by sticking a wooden spoon into the bottom and it'll bubble when it's ready. You want to make sure that the grease is hot enough because that will prevent any oil from getting into the honey bun, or as little as possible. Whenever you're frying foods, you want the oil to be hot enough so that you fry it to where minimal oil remains in the dough whenever you're cooking it. That being said, you don't want to get this too hot because you will set every smoke detector off in your house if you do. I would recommend putting it on medium high and letting it heat up. Each time that you put a new round of honey buns in, it's going to drop the temperature, so you might have to wait a little bit between sets in order to keep that temperature optimal. So ultimately you want a thermometer, but you can also do this without one by using a wooden spoon, which I had to do, and they turned out great. Cook these for a minute to a minute and a half on each side. Set them on a wire rack and let them cool. Then we can enjoy these beautiful masterpieces we've created.